Good morning. Well, it's good afternoon because it's 12:20 here. Good morning, good afternoon here. Good morning somewhere else in the world. And good evening wherever it's evening too. Good day. I say good day. Guys, I just want to share this morning. I've written it down and shared it in a blog, but I want to speak it from my mouth. These are words of life for me. And speaking them, it feels essential. Several years ago, I had a really strong impression from God. I was standing in the living room of my house in Abbotsford at the time, and it was just like 45 is going to be a very significant year. And I was like, 45? Why 45? That's so weird. And I immediately put all kinds of meaning to that. I was like, oh, what's going to happen at 45? Am I going to get married at 45? Is the dream, the vision that I have of togetherness and healing for families finally going to come alive at 45? Oh, look, alive at 45, that rhymed. Didn't mean to do that, but was that what was going to happen? And just what was this big thing that was going to happen at 45? And 45 came and went. And I was just like, oh, what? I have asked several times, what was so significant about 45? And then this morning, I remembered that on my 45th birthday, the greeting and the thanks and the heart message that I shared that year was this: the world has been a significant portion of the world, or people, some of us were calling a human being by a number. We were calling that person 45 instead of calling them by their name, because we did not like what they were doing. We did not like what we saw of them. And I said that year, and Facebook, if they still have those messages, that live, I don't know if I did it live or if I wrote it. I'm pretty sure it might have been both. Anyway, that we needed to call that person by their name. They are a human being. And I said, I would appreciate if 45 would not be associated with dehumanizing another person, please. I'd like to enjoy my 45th year. I remember saying that when I was 45 this morning. I remembered that. And I remembered that this morning as I started just responding to one of Trevor Noah's posts, which is so profound and funny, that said, it said, do you know the thing about crime? Basically, I'm going to read it exactly. It said this: the hood made me realize that crime succeeds because crime does the one thing the government doesn't do. Crime cares. Crime is grassroots. Crime looks for the young, kids who need support and a lifting hand. Crime offers internship programs and part-time jobs and opportunities for advancement. Crime gets involved in the community. Crime does not discriminate. Anyone who wants to may participate in crime. And I laughed, and then I said, that is so true. And then engaged in discussion with a few other people, who were commenting on the same post that Trevor made. And after I, as I saw it, then after I had stopped the discussion, so much more came alive in my mind. And as I wrote, like, what came out of my heart, I realized, I was just like, oh my goodness, it was all about forgiveness. Like, all of it has been about forgiveness. Like, the journey of my life has literally been about forgiveness. And because of forgiveness, then restoration. And what was important about 45, like that, those sentiments that I expressed on my 45th birthday came to mind. And it was like, in that moment, because I never know what I'm going to say. Like, I literally just like speak from my heart as my heart and my head like really observe the things that are happening around me. And that year, when that came out of me, I was just like, whoa, wait, what? Yeah, that is exactly what I feel. And that's so. And I remember that year, I remember saying later that year, I made a deliberate choice not to listen to any news, not to listen to any presidential, like nothing. I listened to no speeches. I listened to none of it. Like, I made a conscious decision not to listen to any of it because I knew that my heart and my head weren't integrated in a place where I could take it in and be at peace, and more than not be at peace, to be very specific, I knew that my heart and head weren't in a place where I could take it in and not respond with just like a sword that was meant to cut, like Peter cut off Malchus's ear. I knew I knew that I needed to I needed to be blind for a little while so that I could really see. I knew that I needed to be blind for a little while so that I could really see. And I knew a year later, when I listened to a State of the Union address, I knew a year later when I listened to a State of the Union address that I was absolutely right to do that for myself because of like the really visceral impact that listening to it had on me. Like, I felt literally sick to my stomach. And because God had been working with me for so long by that time on asking why, I actually just started crying. Like, I was at the gas station. I was at a Shell gas station in Aldergrove, that gas station on the border between Aldergrove and Abbotsford. I was putting gas in the car and I hadn't listened the night before. So I went to YouTube to find it. Excuse me. And I listened and I just started crying. Like, I felt sick to my stomach and I just like tears started coming out of my eyes. And I was just like, what is this? And because God has been working with me for so long on the science of being human and like really encouraging me to ask why, I really sat with God and I asked why. And that has brought me, Angeli, can you bring me, on my bookshelf, there is the book, there are the two books, my Long COVID Connect book and the How I See Scripture Through God's Eyes, through the life of Jesus, I mean. Can you bring me How I See Scripture Through the Life of Jesus, please? And I need it as soon as you can, like within a few seconds if possible. And I processed that until and in just like continue to observe the world and continue to ask why and continue to learn more. And literally, when I say, guys, that the more I have sat with God and just really sat at Jesus's feet. When I say sit at Jesus's feet, I really mean that. Like, thank you. Thanks, babe. And when I say sit at Jesus's feet, I really mean that. Like, sit at Jesus's feet and first learn to see God, the Father, whom, and to be honest, first learn to see God, and then learn to first call him Father, because I was just like, oh, okay, so now I finally accept this Father that you guys have been telling me about, because like the Father that you have been telling me about for all these years definitely wasn't one I could get behind. But the Father whom I met as I looked, as Jesus introduced them to me, I could get behind. And then I was just like, and then I asked all the questions. It's just like, so if you're the Father, where's the mother? Why is there no mother? Like, what happened to the feminine? And all those questions are answered too. And you can ask God those questions, but I believe that the Spirit of God is the feminine. There's the Father and the Mother and the Son. And where's the daughter? I don't know, but that's not necessary. There's a Father and there's a Mother and there's a Son, and there are many daughters and many sons. Anyway, so as I continued to really process all of that, I first was still stuck on the man. And I was just like, there's a reason. There's a reason that this person shows up in the world as they have. And the person shows up in the world as they have, and they have lots and lots of support for showing up as they are. And why is that? Because they haven't just like appeared on, nobody ever just like jumps onto the scene and just takes over the world. In order to do anything, we, like, every single world leader, every single little person on the playground whom we may call a bully, which is a person who exerts control and force over others. They have a team. Not a single one ever does any of that on their own. Always people behind them. Always people with them. Always. And so I'm just like, why? And this morning, so I processed all of that. I'm going to read a poem first. Processed all of that. And then one day, I just had this like aha moment, this like moment of clarity. And it was just like, oh my goodness. It is because this person literally is a reflection of what we have accepted as God. And that, the way that is played out, is not only played out in that person. I see it in so many places, in so many systems, as in a parent-child system, in the family system, in the parent-child relationship, in religious circles, in the way religious leaders interact with their congregants or their followers, whatever they're called, in whichever different entity, in interpersonal, intimate relationships. I see how that's played out. I see it playing out in classrooms with teachers and students. I see it like everywhere, like literally I see it between friends. I see it, and I was just like, it is the supremacy virus. It has infected us in so many ways. And with that, there is blame and shame and why. And then I realized that blame and shame plays such a huge role in the way we interact with each other, and in the way our relationships either move humanity forward or cause humanity to regress. And I'm telling you guys, that's why I love the Bible so much, because it is a really wonderful framework of humanity, and it shows us the different cycles, like the same thing happening in cycles. And it's like, hey, are you gonna learn from this? It's not, these people are holy and you should follow them. It's, oh, hey, here are all these stories of human beings trying to do life together and God trying to communicate healing and a memory of the way we really need to be, the way we really want to be. And then we have Jesus. So we have the Old Testament and we have those stories, first creation, then the choice to experience good and evil, and then the experience of good and evil, and God continuing to try to speak life into us, and as a wonderful parent, continuing also to care for us and care for them, because it's their story, right? Where we weren't there yet. Care for them and give them advice, and they do stupid shit and get in so much trouble, and things fall apart, and then there are battles and there are wars, and there is the mystical, amazing power of our energy that we really need to pay attention to, and also the reality that there is counter energy. There is energy that is for togetherness, because togetherness profits all. And there is energy that is for disconnection, because disconnection profits one. Disconnection profits one, and connection profits all. And that energy, and Jesus, and we see it happening. I'm just like, as a child, I was just like, some of this doesn't make sense to me, but they said it makes sense. So even if it doesn't make sense to me, they said it makes sense, and they told me to believe. And so I'm just, okay. And I read the stories, and I read the stories, and I read the stories. And then we have Jesus. Then we've got the New Testament, and we've got Jesus coming into the picture. And Jesus is the embodiment of God with us. And as Jesus is born, there's from the beginning, there's this effort immediately to kill him, because Jesus now is coming as an example of what connection is and what love looks like, and and a reminder of who we really are and what we really, really want to be, without blame and without shame and without supremacy. And then after that, we've got Jesus, even Jesus being physically with people, the embodiment of God with us, and doing life day to day for a full 3.5 years and that's proven in history. You can go look for that. There's the Case for Christ and different things that you can read, different historical books that talk about Jesus who lived on earth. Whether or not we believe that he was truly divine and God, that's a thing for you to sort out yourself. But historically, we have evidence that Jesus was really, really lived on earth. And so, and then for 3.5 years, you've got Jesus, trying to teach a group of people, exactly what God was trying to teach the whole nation for all those generations and generations. And they still didn't get it. So much so that Jesus even said to Philip said to Jesus one day, "Can you show us the Father?" And Jesus was just like, "Really, Philip? Have I been with you for so long and you still haven't seen the Father? I and the Father are one. Connection. We're one. We have the same goal. Connection. To progress to move us all forward together in love. To unleash all the wonderful different ways of creativity and everything that you can see right here in front of us. Like, consider the lilies of the field. Look at how they grow. Like, and they don't even think about it. They just live, and they know that they're going to be fine. And look at the ants, and look at this, and look at that, and look at the birds of the air. Consider the sparrow. Not the most majestic bird at all when we think of majestic birds, but like, it's taken care of, and it doesn't worry. And like, have you been so long with me and not seen the Father? And then Jesus, like, he keeps saying that to them over and over again. We're sitting on a mountaintop. A whole bunch of people are here. And they're listening to Jesus talk. And then they're just like, all these people are hungry. Like, what are we going to do? And Jesus is just like, what are we going to do? Jesus does not immediately like fix it. He's just like, yeah, what are we going to do? To see, like, have they gotten it yet? Do they understand the power of like togetherness and the power of connection, like, to the divine heart? And they're just like, oh, what do you want us to do? Like, even if they start like immediately freaking out. It's just like, oh, what do you want us to do? Like, even if we put everything that we have together, like, it would never begin to. And Andrew goes out looking, and Andrew goes out looking, and this little boy, a child, was just like, oh, he's like, I can imagine the conversation, you know? It's just like, oh, hey, what are you looking for? And he says to the child, we're trying to figure out how to like provide food for everybody here. And the child says, oh, my mommy made me food today. Here, she made me 5 loaves and 2 fish. You give it to Jesus. Children know. Children know. The innocence of children, like, children know in ways that we forget because we have allowed fear and anxiety and all of that to really cloud our vision. And so that little child just knew and gave his lunch. Just like, oh, take it to Jesus. And with those 5 loaves and 2 fish, or fishes, the multitude was fed. And then Jesus died and left, ascended. And then they kept trying to figure it out again. It's just like, oh, we got to like gather and figure it out. And then we see the different, if you read Paul's letters, like, you see that there were different schools of thought, and there was tug of war as to who was right and who was wrong. And you see the relationship. You continue to see them trying to figure it out after Jesus. We're still trying to figure it out. Like, that's what's up. And God keeps saying, oh, hey, hello, look at Jesus. Like, what did Jesus say? You're all like fighting about like being right. You're right. You're right. You're right. And Jesus clearly said, hey, yeah, no, nobody's ever going to be fully right. Not until like the time when there is the harvest and I really believe that the harvest is a very personal, both a personal and a collective thing, where each of us, Jesus told a story of the wheat and the tares. And Jesus said, remember, here's the story of the farmer, a farmer sowed his crops, came and sowed the seed to reap the crop that he expected to reap. Did all the work, and then in the night, cover of darkness, an enemy came in and sowed different seeds in the field too. And then left. That's it. Just sowed the seeds and left. And then as the seeds began to sprout, they sprouted, and it must have been that they were, just looked so similar that in that sprouting stage, couldn't really tell what it was. And then as the plants grew bigger, it became clear that there were different crops, and that someone had come into the field and planted tears along with the wheat. So someone had planted tear seeds where the farmer had planted wheat seeds. And the servants asked, hey, should we uproot the tears? And the farmer said, no, don't do that. Because if you do that, you may uproot the wheat as well. Just wait until the time of harvest. And in the time of harvest, it will become very clear which is wheat and which is tears. And then we can sift, we'll be able to sift those out, and the wheat will remain. Tears, I looked up what tears were, and the tears would have been TARES, would have looked very, very similar to the wheat. And it's just that there's no nutritional value. It serves no purpose. So it's just like, you could eat it and it would fill you, but you wouldn't be nourished in the same way that the wheat would nourish you. Whereas the wheat is full of all the nutrients, and like you can do with it things that you could never do with the tears. And so as I just really sat with God, I'm just like, yeah, I think that I realized that happens in each heart, that time of harvest, and when you link that with the parable of the sower as well, it's like it's all intertwined. The seeds are sown, and at different times the harvest is different because of the soil, or the environment in which the seed falls. And so I'm just like, oh, that makes so much sense. So there are places through different times in our lives, the harvest, there is harvest. And in one person's life, in the individual life, there is harvest so many different times as we learn different things in different phases of our lives. And so with each, the more we learn and the more we lean towards love, the more tears are removed. And there will eventually come a time, like the point of that story is also to keep hope alive. There will eventually be a time where the tears will be completely sifted out, and there will be a harvest. There's always a harvest. Always. 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 Unless there is utter destruction of the crop, there's a harvest. And Jesus promises that there is a harvest. And so I'm holding to that irrepressible hope. That's faith. And so as I going back to processing the way that one person was showing up in the world, and why it is that we were scapegoating that one person, because that's where I was sitting. I was just like, this person has been duly elected by many people. So why are we scapegoating this one person when I look around, I'm just like, everybody, and generalizing now when I say everybody, and I recognize that I'm generalizing because I know that there are going to be some people who weren't, but I mean, for the most part, we were just very divided, and we were using our mouths in just the same way, depending on who we're supporting. Because if I'm going to let's use the American election process that year as an example. On one side, you had one side was calling the other side deplorables, and then the other side was calling the other side sheeple. Was that what it was? And now we have maggots and libtards and covidiots, and they're just like, we're just name calling all around. Like, it's just like a whole bunch of name calling, and I'm just like, as we say in the Caribbean, as we say in Antigua, but Sungu no better than Lungu. Sungu no better than Lungu. Everybody's doing the same thing. So if we're all doing the same thing, and it's this like big separation, and just like fighting, like we're all at war, like how come we're scapegoating? And it's just like, oh, it just goes right back to the original desire to shame and blame in order to stay relevant, in order to stay right, in order to stay alive, because we're not willing to look at ourselves. So we put it's like literally what was described in one portion of the sacrificial process in Israel, in ancient Israel. And then we could go back and look at that whole sacrificial process and where it came from as well. It's again that idea of blaming and putting our actions on an innocent in order to feel better about ourselves. And so they did that. Like, they would put all of their sins on a scapegoat. And the cruel thing, like, I'm just like, it's so cruel. They put their sins on the scapegoat, essentially, and then send the scapegoat out of the camp with no one to care for it. So with the expectation that this scapegoat is going to basically starve to death. Like, and I'm just like, oh my God, like, I'm just like, when I look at Jesus, I'm just like, there's no way that had anything to do with God. Like, there's no way that God was telling them, look, yeah, put your sins on this innocent animal and leave it to starve to death. Whew, what? Same way, put your sins on this innocent lamb, kill it, and when you do that, that's representation of your sins being forgiven. I'm just like, wait, what? Man, there's no way, because none of that lines up with what Jesus did and what Jesus showed us. What Jesus showed us was that putting all of our, in dying, Jesus did two things. Let's say that the deceiver who first tried to assert control and who tried to steal allegiance and relationship away from God and Adam and Eve, who disconnected them, is like a kidnapper, is a kidnapper who came in and took your kids. And then you know the kidnapper, and you know that this is what they do, and that they demand blood, like their ransom is blood, right? And so the kidnapper really wanted your position, and so the kidnapper really wanted Jesus dead. And so from the beginning, they're just like, we know that this kidnapper is out there, and if our children do, if he does manage to deceive our children and take them from us, we will allow him to kill us, so that I will allow him to kill me, because I am what he really wants. I am the one that he really wants. And so, knowing that, First of all, in the story in Genesis, there's no record, not a one, of God actually killing any animal to clothe Adam and Eve. No sacrifice shown in that, nowhere. Because God does not need a scapegoat. They already had a plan. And God gave information, verbally, had a conversation. This is what would happen. This is what it will be like. And we are with you, and we promise that we're coming to get you. We promise that there'll be rescue. And there's so much about that whole process that we just don't understand. Excuse me. And so, and we just need to keep learning. Anyway, so there's that. And so when I look at it, I'm just like, man, somewhere along the line, somebody instituted the deceiver, who is about blood and blame, and who wants blood, and who is so cunning that their crop looks so similar to the wheat, the tares look so similar to the wheat, deceived again, continually deceiving. That is what they do, into thinking sacrifice is what you need. For the children to understand, you have to kill a lamb. For the children to understand, you have to kill a lamb. For the children to understand, you must punish them. For the children to understand, they must feel pain. Do we see all those things? And God is just like, yeah, no. Even if we really closely examine the science of brain development, that's just actually what happens when the children feel pain is that they develop fear, and disconnection is instituted. And when we move towards them and talk with them in the way that God talked with Adam and Eve, and we provide what they need, we provide the cover that they need, we create it. We create the cover that they need. We don't harm anything to do it. We find a way to create the cover that they need. We find a way to meet their needs. What happens is attunement and healing, and responding to your child's cries is how the brain develops healthily. And when you respond to your child's cries, and you nurture, and you show up every time, and you give yourself, you dedicate yourself to that for the time that they need it, in the way that they need it, your child develops the ability to, they feel whole. They develop a sense of wholeness, and they develop that sense of wholeness in connection with you. And then they have the neurological skill of being in relationship. They never doubt that they are loved. They just that is their default, is wholeness and authenticity and worthiness, and power, real power, not control, not force. The knowing that we have the agency and the ability to create what we need, because we are doing that in connection. We're not doing it alone. We're not going to be overburdened. None of that. We learn to appreciate rest. We are able to slide into the rhythm of speaking what we need into being, and using our hands when needed, and resting because we know that we're going to be okay. That's what God is calling us to. And so as I moved through all of that, and then looked at the world through that framework, through those lenses, and examined why, and listened to Kofi Annan say, because of his experience, his examination of life and his experience, Kofi Annan say, every single, what's the word that he used? Atrocity. Every single atrocity, every single one began with the dehumanization of one person. just pull one person out of the fabric, pull one person out of disconnection, and treat them as if they really don't belong. And that begins a spiral of degradation of many. And usually when that's done, it's because that one person, and the reality is that the first person who is dehumanized is self. Because anytime another person dehumanizes another, it is usually in order to feel whole again. They feel a hole in themselves and they blame somebody. And so they set their sights on somebody, they blame them, and they're just like, you are the cause of my trouble. And then they, irrational or not, whether it's rational or irrational, and then disconnection and pain and war starts there with the degradation of self, and then turning that towards others. And then because we are all in survival mode at that point, then we tend to flock together as a survival mechanism. And then you have one set flocking towards one side and one set flocking towards another. And within those sides, there's still going to be multiple other sides, and just disconnection on disconnection. And it spirals until like everything's falling apart. But it will never all fall apart because there is God. And the wheat still exists. The wheat still exists, even though the tears are there. And so this morning, as I connected with what Trevor Noah was saying about how crime does what the government does not do, which is it seems to care. I was just like, oh look, it's the wheat and the tears again. It's grassroots. It comes in and it's just like, oh hey, I see you. You need people. And that's how gangs are created. That's how battle starts. That's how armies are built. That's in every way. That's how it starts. It's just like, oh hey, I see you. Come fight with me. Let me take care of you. And when you're a soldier going to battle, you're literally putting yourself at risk of being killed. And they're not promising you resurrection. No, they're not. They're not promising you resurrection. They're just saying, die for us. That's it. Just die for us. And then we make it seem as if that's a good thing by honoring those of you who die for us. And then we teach that this is a good thing. It's a good thing for you to die for me. And then we build that idea for generations and generations and generations until people feel like it's a heroic thing to go die for, instead of doing what Jesus like literally told us what to do. Jesus was just like, hey guys, listen, if somebody does something and it's hurt you, this is what you do. Matthew chapter 18, it's there. Go talk to them. Have a conversation one-on-one with them. Go talk to them. And if you can't figure it out, if they won't hear you, then bring more witnesses. That's togetherness. It's like you start with one and then you bring another one in. And then you bring more. And it's just like you bring more witnesses and you try to have a discussion on that level. And if that doesn't work, then you broaden, like you go out to the wider community and you bring more eyes in. Like the more we are together, that like little children's song, did you like, Will? The more we are together, the more we are together, the happier we'll be. Because your friends are my friends and my friends are your friends. The more we are together, the happier we'll be. Bring more people in. And then Jesus says, and then if they don't listen to you and you can't come to resolution, just treat them like you treat what does it say? I don't remember the exact word, but it's just like basically just treat them like somebody who doesn't believe, right? And it's amazing when we hit that spot. How does Jesus treat people who doesn't believe? I'm just like, Jesus is just like, well, I actually get closer to them, and like I did with you guys, like you guys who really didn't believe and who were struggling, like I literally like came to earth, like brought myself down from like where I was enjoying life, and I came to be with you. I came closer to you and I took care of you. I showed you what it looked like to, like in the way Jesus answered John. When John the Baptist was in prison, and Jesus said, and John sent his followers to ask Jesus, like, was I wasting my time? Are you really the one? And Jesus waited. Jesus told them, like, stay with me today. And then at the end of the day, Jesus said to them, no, go back and tell John all the things that you've seen. And that answered John's question. So it's taking care of each other. That's the answer. Like, that's what Jesus is saying. Like, for people who don't believe, for people, like, what do I do with people who don't believe? I take care of them. And so, like, that's what Jesus is saying. Not like shun them. Jesus didn't shun anybody. Jesus was just like, okay. Even when Jesus went to Gennesaret and healed the man who was possessed by a demon, who had been like terrorizing the city, like terrorizing them. Like, he healed the man, and the demons who had been in him got put into the pigs, and like, I want you to see, like, I really need us to see that story and understand how disconnection and pain is what evil does. Jesus was showing that in that story. Like, that's the point. Evil is intent on disconnection and pain and destruction, and not caring about literally our needs. So the demons didn't ask Jesus to kill the pigs. Notice, the demons said, okay, we need somewhere to be. Can we go into these pigs? Like, don't destroy us. Just, can we go into these pigs? And Jesus was like, sure, you can get out of the man, but you can go into the pigs if you want to. It's all about choice. And what did the demons choose to do when they inhabited those pigs? They chose to toss the pigs over the cliff into the ocean and destroy the whole herd. Notice that Jesus did not do that. Jesus said, you are free. This man is free. You go where you want to go. They went into the pigs and they destroyed the economy of the people. Jesus literally healed the man who had been terrorizing them. And they came and they blamed Jesus, and they're just like, no, we don't want you here. Get out of here. And Jesus didn't argue with them. He just said, okay. And the man wanted to come. The man wanted to come with him. And Jesus said, no. Like, I understand why you want to come with me, but you stay and just share your story. Share your story. And in that way, as you testify of like the change that you have experienced, like, that's what they need. Like, they need your story. I don't have to stay here. They just need your story of what you have experienced. And so, like, that's all I'm doing now. Like, that's all I'm doing now. I'm just like, hey, this morning I was like, oh, for the last 50 years, you have been with me on a journey of forgiveness. And you told me that when I was 45, it was going to be a significant year. And it was like a big mind shift for me that I didn't even recognize. I didn't even recognize how significant a mind shift it was that year, even though I shared like from my heart, like what I was experiencing. I didn't realize that it was a forgiveness journey. And then I'm just like, literally from infancy, I have been on this 50-year journey of forgiveness where when I was a little baby and I was crying and asking for what I needed, and my parents, who had been like told that it's better not to go every time the baby cries, let her cry. That pain is real pain. And I have shared before of now that I have done the internal work and really unpacked, like literally, I was in meditation. It was 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2021. I was in meditation and just talking with God about this, and like doing the infant inner child healing work. It's such an important work, friends. Doing that inner child healing work. And I literally had a vision of my little self. I have been terrified of the dark for a significant portion of my life. I literally had a portion of my infant self lying in the crib in the dark, terrified. I wasn't crying. And I had, like, I was just like, and like, I literally had that moment for a split second. I was like, wait, why am I not crying? Because like, that's the story that I'd always been told, like how much I cried and I cried and I cried. But what was underneath the tears? Absolute terror of the dark. And why? I don't know. Because I recognize now that I'm a very, how do I explain it? Like, I just have like real strong sensory input, and I still don't know how to fully explain it, but I know that like I feel everything around me. I feel it really strongly. And so little me would have been experiencing that and really needed my big people to come and be with me through that. And they weren't showing up, not because they didn't want to, because they were very loving. And I know that they were very loving because in meditation, again, I had literally had an, there are 3 things that I'm going to tell you about meditation with me and that healing process right now. 1, the first time, and it's wonderful that this is where God starts. The first time, when my teacher David was taking me through a clearing process, it's a forgiveness process. It's like literally like you purge yourself of all the negative thoughts that you have attached to a person, and then you don't go into any storytelling, just like all the negative words that you could possibly use to describe a person in your experience of them. And then you sit with the thoughts, sit with the words, each one, and all you do is like you sit with that person, a surrogate, not the same person, because then nobody could ever really receive all those negative thoughts without getting defensive, and that completely defeats the process. So you sit with a neutral person who is just sitting there with you in love, and they ask, now let's say I say annoying or like arrogant or whatever, and they just ask, and can you see why this innocent soul would be arrogant, as they like, which is not really who they are, but as they try to survive. And you just sit with that. And I went through that process. My mom and I have had this like really tumultuous relationship for all of my life, for like a significant portion of my life, because it's not that way anymore. No, now I know that we're in healing mode, and it's like baby steps, right? Anyway, so for a lot of my life we had that, and I tell her outright, it's just like, you don't love me. And so we just like, we really struggle with connection, and like I'd argue with her a lot, and if she said A, I'd say Z. And we are so very similar, like really analytical thinkers. Like that's just who we are. We've been that way. And so it's just like, well, I see this and I see that. But we were never able to come to a meeting of the minds because there's this like rift. And why? We just didn't know. It was just there. And so, excuse me, I am in that session. I go through the whole session with David. And it was so awesome because it was during COVID. And so we were doing it virtually. And so we were doing it virtually. I was in my house, in my office. He was in his house. And we were like just doing it, like seeing each other over Zoom or whatever it was at the time. It was Zoom or I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Like that doesn't matter. Anyway, so we're doing it virtually and we go through this whole clearing. And then at the end of that, like you go through that process, you judge all your thoughts, basically. Like you're judging all these thoughts that you've held of this person. And then you move into bringing forward like all the wonderful things that you think of this person. And literally, like as I am sitting here in this chair this morning, like very clearly seeing myself in this camera as I talk with you, I had like, as I'm talking to David, there's this like very clear like picture, like reflection, like appearance of my mom and my brother and my dad, my big brother and my dad, because it was just the three of them at the time. I was coming into the family next, holding me, like my mom was holding me, and the love, guys, the love. The love that was there, like I cannot begin to like actually, I cannot describe it. And so like that challenged literally everything that I had been struggling with for my whole life. I was just like, wait, what? Like she loves me that much? And David was just like, yes. He's just like, what? We were celebrating, and it was just like, I don't actually, we were done the session and we had wrapped up the session and I was just sitting there with the thoughts, and that was what manifested. And then I told him, I was just like, oh my God, David, you cannot believe what happened. And he was just like, yes, he was so excited. He was like, wait, what? And I was just like, dude, yes. And then another time, as I was continuing on that healing process, I was doing an infant meditation around coming home. Because the point is to come home to yourself, like really come home to your heart. And and the guide, it was John Maxwell, in his book, Homecoming. It was named John Maxwell. It's not John Maxwell. It's not Maxwell. It is, oh my God, how can I not remember his name right now? I'll share it after. I can just Google it. Homecoming. It was just like, yes, babe. Oh yes, we can. We will. Homecoming. Not King Home. Homecoming by John Bradshaw. John Bradshaw. So like he's basically like, so he's like, okay, so take like visualize yourself in your childhood home. And as I'm sitting there and I'm just like sitting in it with God and listening to John Bradshaw, before I start any process, because we're all people, and you know, I like, my partner is God in like all of this. So I always start my process. I used to be afraid. Like, let's start there. I used to be afraid because for so long I had been told that all those things were demonic. And so I was just like, okay, God, like, I really feel like this is where you're guiding me. and you know my heart, and so I'm inviting you into this with me. 100%. I need you here. And so as I was going through that, John Bradshaw was just like, visualize yourself going back to visualize your home, and the meditation, and like think of the thoughts that come to your mind, like those things that you're carrying that are painful, that were like the wounds attached to that place. Just give them back. Give those wounds back to the person who wounded you. And the Spirit of God was like right with me. And like, as John Bradshaw said those words, immediately, like right away, I heard, don't you dare give those to her. Give them back to me. You give them to me. You don't. And I was just like, yeah, no, I don't want her to carry that. So, because that was my thought. Like, as he was saying that, I was just like, wait, like I had that. I was just like, wait, what? I don't want to give those to her. And the Spirit was just like, no, you don't. You don't want to give those to her. Give them to me. And it was like so there's that oneness, like that oneness of heart, because like healing is what we're looking for. And I'm just like, I'm not trying to give somebody my wounds. Like, why would I do that? And I was just like, yeah, no, that is not what you want to do. And that's the beautiful thing about God. Like, God, in my experience, God's not forceful. There's no like even going ahead of me in my like thinking. It's just like literally with me. And so like we are like thinking and interacting together. And God is like just holding space for me to think and to like really come to the realization of what it is that my heart really is at the core. Like, what do I really want? And that's what the experience was in that moment. But it was so seamless. It was just like Bradshaw says, give these wounds back to them. And I was just like, it was the seamlessness of the thought. It was just like, but I don't want to give those back to her. And it was just like, I was having this moment where it was like, I was just going to be wondering, it's just like, I don't want to give them back to her. So what am I supposed to do with them? And like, the Spirit didn't even like let me like flail at all. There was none. It was just like, you don't want to give them back to her. Give them to me. And I was just like, okay, totally. Here, you take them. And it just was such a beautiful feeling. And then another time I was doing an infant meditation, and as I was saying earlier, and then infant me, I saw myself in the crib, and it was dark, and I was terrified. I was literally terrified. And the Spirit said to me these words: you know exactly what to do with that baby. And I just smiled and I said, I know exactly what to do with that baby. And I did. In my mind, I picked my little self up and I comforted myself. And if we only understood that God's deepest desire is that we would like really get back in touch with our agency and like the power attached to that, and the compassion, the informed compassion that increases in us with all of those experiences. And that's why, like, then I think the next year, because I think that was, and then that was maybe in the summer and the fall. And then in the winter, the February of the following year, I went to the 3-day, and that helped me. The 3-day attached to life app. So if you are looking for process work. That's one of the things that's it's really good process work. We're all humans, and just like I was saying with Bradshaw had amazing, like his work had an amazing impact on me, and with the Spirit with me, it was just like, yeah, don't do exactly what Bradshaw is saying there. Hand this to me, because we're all humans, and so we don't get it all right. But the intention of our hearts when we do it, in connection with the Spirit, like, amazing things happen. That's why live your dreams. Like, you don't have to be perfect. Like, the Spirit with us totally makes it, just totally does what, like, supersedes our, like, the tears and like the places where we ask for things and we have good reason. But it's just like, they have such good Bradshaw has amazing reason for asking you to give your wounds back to your mom, because, like, the point is, don't keep carrying these with you. And I think, like, and I know also that based on, like, his philosophy, it's just like, you give them back to her, and because you're healing, when you reconnect with her, it will be as if those wounds never even existed. But I know that because of the way we are, if you give your wounds back to somebody with blame and shame as a part of the wounded part of our psyche, like, naturally what I maybe not everybody, but I know me. And so I know the Spirit did this for me, because naturally it would have been like, yeah, I'm giving it back to you because that belongs to you. And then I would have been stuck in blame and shame a little bit longer than I needed to be. And so just not giving them back to her was what I needed, for sure. I don't know if that's what everybody needs, but I know the Spirit for sure knows what you need, because they just know us. And so moving through, when I went to the 3-day and we're going through a process, and this is still with me having done so much other work, one of the things that I realized as we're going through a process was just like, oh my God, there's so much contempt still in me towards, like, outwards, because of that early wound. And so they were asking us to do a thing, and I was just like, why is nothing coming through? Like, I am nothing. And then in another process, like, the contempt that was there, it was like the Spirit was just like, contempt, excuse me, you need to release the contempt. And so I started verbally releasing my contempt by literally saying how much I felt like I was better than everybody else. And that's defensiveness, right? That's defensiveness that fills a wound of helplessness. It's arrogance that covers helplessness. And I know that those two things are intertwined in all of us, arrogance and helplessness. And so as I released that, then literally everything that they had been asking me to do earlier, it just came pouring out. Like, I went back to my room and I sat on my bed and just writing and writing and writing and writing, and it's like pouring out of me. And I was like, oh my God, contempt was blocking me. And and so I'm just like, oh, if contempt is blocking me, yes? Yes, ma'am? We're good. It's 1:30. You'll be there on time. And I'm not going to leave right now because I'm going to wrap this up. Okay. In time for you to get there on time. Okay? And so it's just like, if contempt is in my heart, and as I reflect on history and I look at it all and look at how our brain works and how our brain and hearts, when I say heart, not like the bum beating heart, but how the way we connect with each other, like love, is affected by contempt historically, and the defensiveness. And when I look at Kofi Annan's assertion that every atrocity began with the dehumanization of one person. And when I look at the reality that that person is self first, and when I read James Hollis's work about the examination, self-examination, and when I listen to Brene Brown talk about vulnerability and what it means to be brave, and when I like look at the children and how they interact with each other, and when I look at the spiders and the webs, like all of it is connected. Like just when I look at the world and everything, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And as I processed through all of it, and then this morning with Trevor Noah, I was just like, oh, this has all been about forgiveness. And even the book that I wrote, I posted some of it, Zamira, and the Wonderversely Full World. Last week, when those words like sprouted in my mind, like I cannot tell you, wonderversely full. It just started with that one word. Oh, what a wonderversely full world. And I was just like, oh wow. Was it last week or the week before? And I was just like, oh, what a wonderversely full world. Like that's what we're missing. And that's what was taken from us when we were separated into race and racism and white supremacy and parental supremacy and all of this. And when God told me, when I was just like, God, what am I supposed to do with these kids? And God said, freedom. Like, that's what God was calling me back to, the wonderversely full world. And so the leaders we scapegoat, reflections of the God we made. We have long crafted our gods in the image of what we think to be power, shaped from fear, carved from hierarchy, polished by control, and named them holy. Then, when those gods take on flesh and rise in the likeness of our own ego, we call them monsters. We call them unholy. We call them them. We call them out of their name as if they are not us and we are not them. As if they are not perfect iterations of the God we made, who exterminates pests, the God of empire, the God of conditional love, the God of dominance and fear, golden towers and threats of fire boasting from the heavens, ruling by fear and flattery, smiting enemies with tweets and plagues. He loves who serves, strikes who strays, demands loyalty, not love. His grace is a gamble, his wrath a given. He honors walls, not gardens. Gains with war, not through patiently crafted peace. And millions kneel not to him, but to his caricature framed in stained glass, enthroned in pulpits, cloaked in tradition, laced with the perfume of piety. Because this is the God we were taught. A God of control, not comfort. A God of exclusion, not embrace. A God whose justice justifies control, and whose blessings favor the wealthy. This is the God who strikes children into silence, calls submission salvation, and cloaks abuse in authority. This is the God who watches the slap and calls it sanctified. The God who rules by fear and scarcity and calls crumbs grace. This is the God of the tear-stained church, the church that takes and takes, that gives very sparingly, that praises tithes and gifts and is oblivious to the trauma left in its wake. The church wrestling with learning how to be a good neighbor. This is not Christ reflecting our divine parent. This is church in the image of empire, not the Christ of foot washing and wild welcome. This is monarchy draped in robes, empire crowned and cross adorned. And then when leaders boldly unmask what others kept hidden, when they rip the veil off the God we already served, they shout what we speak of in the shadows. They play the same game and in authenticity refuse to hide the rules. And so, increasing numbers worship this God, whom we have always worshipped mindlessly. Pharisees and priests, pastors and deacons, healers, apostles, visionaries, smothering, othering in piety, with tear-stained heart, infected with supremacy, doling out inferiority, inspired by the one who grasps at divinity without comprehending that sanctified disdain is not love. Silenced children are not saved. Slaps are not sacraments. Swords are not signs of the Spirit. From the altars of kings to the pews of presidents, from Vatican crowns to colonial mandates, from crusades to codes of conduct, religion and government have long innocently conspired to make empire look divine. Deceived, they have traded gardens for borders. We have traded gardens for borders, hospitality for hierarchy, and the Christ who welcomed children for the God who wounds them and calls it obedience. Do you see it now? Does it stir a holy ache, a fire, a yearning, or fear that this God, this hollow God of empire, might smite you for daring to tell the truth? Then slow down and experience the truth infused with a resounding whisper from the one who comforted, cared for, and corrected Elijah after his misaligned slaughter. Because Christ is not empire. Christ is not wrath wrapped in ritual. Christ is not the slap. Christ is not the silence. Christ is not the sword. Christ is the child, the wounded, the weeping, the wanderer, the torn veil, the undone temple, the one who says, "Let them come to me." Whisper it true, it will resound. Christ is not empire. Christ is not wrath wrapped in ritual. Christ is not the slap. Christ is not the silence. Christ is not the sword. Christ is the child, the wounded, the weeping, the wanderer, the torn veil, the undone temple, the one who kneels in the dust with the shamed and refuses to unclothe the shamers publicly, but writes with his fingers, "I know you, and just as I have covered her, I cover you too." The one who says, "Do you love me? Do you doubt? Have you betrayed me? I understand. Come with me, walk with me, and learn how to feed my sheep." Trump is one of the sheep to be fed, nurtured, and restored. He is not to be blamed for being just like us, deceived, infected with supremacy, and suckled on inferiority. And to us, love says, "Come, sit, listen, heal, experience the kingdom of the true God through the example and teachings of the living Christ, now on earth as it is in heaven." I love you so much, and I have such compassion for all of us as we really figure out in this place where we are deeply wounded how to heal and how to come together in a one diversely full world. Bye.